Ufo in Mexico. On May 3, 1975, Carlos Antonio de los Santos Montiel was flying toward Mexico City when his Piper PA-24 began to wobble for no apparent reason. A few moments later, the young pilot spotted a gray, disc-shaped object 10 to 10 feet in diameter, just above the plane's right wing. A second body, similar to the first, flew at the same speed to his left. Most frightening of all, however, was a third object that seemed to want to run him over. The UFO passed right under his plane, so close that it scratched the bottom of the fuselage. De los Santos was almost beside himself with fear, and his terror increased when he discovered that the control equipment had locked up. He could not get them to work, yet, strangely enough, the plane continued to fly at a constant speed of 320 kilometers per hour. When the UFOs were no longer visible, De los Santos regained control of the device. He immediately made radio contact with the Mexico City airport and reported the incident while crying with emotion. The control tower also considered his communication because it had detected the objects with radar. Air traffic controller Emilio Estañol explained to reporters that the objects had turned 270 degrees at a speed of 828 kilometers per hour in the space of only 5 kilometers. Normally, an airplane traveling at this speed needs 13 to 16 kilometers to make a turn like that, he pointed out. In all my 16 years as an air traffic controller, I have never seen anything like this. After landing, unharmed, De los Santos was examined by a doctor and found to be in satisfactory condition. But, as he would not be slow to learn, his bad story was not yet over. His sighting had received widespread publicity in the Mexican press, and 2 weeks later, De los Santos, a shy young man of 23 whose ambition was to become an airline pilot, was asked to appear on a television program to discuss his experience. Although reluctant, he agreed. On the day he was to appear on TV, he drove his car toward the TV station. At one point, he saw a large black car which looked to him like a diplomatic Corps sedan stop in front of him. He looked in the rear-view mirror and saw that he was tailed by an identical car. The two cars, which appeared so new that he thought they had never been used before, had caught him in the middle and before long forced him to pull over to the side of the road. He stopped almost simultaneously with the other two cars. De los Santos was about to get out when 4 tall, broad-shouldered men leapt out of their vehicles. One of them put his hands on the door of Carlos's car as if to prevent him from getting out. He spoke quickly in a strangely mechanical Spanish. "Take care, boy. If you value your life, and your parents' lives too, don't ever speak to anyone about that sighting of yours again." De los Santos, too dumbfounded to respond, watched as the 4 men, who looked northern with unusually pale complexions and wore black suits, returned to their cars and drove off. Then he turned around and drove home. 2 days later, he told his story to Pedro Ferriz, the host of the TV show he was supposed to be on. Ferriz, a UFO enthusiast, said he had heard other reports of strange men in black who had threatened witnesses to sightings. He assured the young pilot that despite the threats, no harm would come to him. In due course, he convinced Carlos to give another interview, which took place without incident. A month later, Carlos met with Dr. J. Allen Hynek, the Northwestern University astronomer who had been the chief scientific advisor to the U.S. Air Force on UFO issues. They conversed, and eventually Hynek invited Carlos to have breakfast with him for the next morning. At 6 a.m., De los Santos left his house and went to the office of Mexicana Airlines, to which he had applied for employment. He then went to the hotel where Hynek was staying. As he climbed the steps, he was surprised to see one of the men in black who had forced him to stop on the highway 4 weeks earlier. "We have already warned you once," intimated the strange individual. "You are not to talk about your experiences." As if to emphasize the seriousness of the threat, he jostled him back a few feet. "It's okay to listen," he continued. "I wouldn't want you to get into bad trouble. Can you tell me why you left the house at 6 o'clock this morning? Do you work for Mexicana Airlines? Get out of here and never come back." De Los Santos left immediately without meeting with Hynek. Recalling those bizarre events 2 years later, De Los Santos told 2 Americans investigating UFOs, "Those men were very strange. They were giants, taller than Mexicans, and very white of skin."